Yeah, winter has come. I think there is a problem in 5th edition. There is a story element. There's something that DMs and players both want to do, both want to incorporate. But right now, the mechanics of 5th edition make it really hard to execute. Imagine this scenario. The players stumble upon a monster lair and pick a bad fight. And suddenly they find themselves in way over their heads and they need to get out of there. Or imagine if the players are sneaking into a dragon's lair trying to scoop up piles of gold, and then all of a sudden they scoop up too much and it wakes the dragon. Suddenly they're trying to flee and the dragon's behind them clawing and breathing fire, and they need to get out of there. Or, and this is important, imagine if confronted by the heroes, your villain finds himself outmatched and he needs to withdraw. How do you make that happen? Right now, it's really easy to get into combat, but really hard to get out. The mechanics make it really difficult to have a satisfying escape. A lot of folks might immediately suggest using the chase rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and we'll get to that. And still, even more folks might suggest using a 4th edition style skills challenge. But the problem is, both of these rely on the Dungeon Master to initiate it. The players don't have any control. So my idea for a solution is taken from turn-based JRPG video games, Japanese RPGs. We introduce an escape action. All right, so this is a somewhat self-inflicted wound. I am notorious for not balancing my world. And a lot of the time the players in the party will find themselves in a situation where they are in way over their heads and they need to get out. See, I'm okay with slaughtering players, but not all players like being slaughtered and not all DMs are really comfortable with that. So I think it'll put a lot of DMs at ease to throw more challenging and difficult encounters if they know we've hardwired a way in for the players to GTFO. Right now, due to the turn-based structure, it's really hard to have a satisfying tactical retreat. You have to have all the players coordinate their actions and do things in order, uninterrupted. And even then, just by the book, it's sort of just a speed versus speed. The Dungeon Master's Guide even acknowledges that this is really unsatisfying. Moreover, the players don't have a really easy way to tell if a monster's too hard for them to fight until they're a few rounds in. So it might be too late by then. And for villains, I've always thought it's kind of cheap just to have your bad guy teleport away or be just an illusion or have an invisibility potion. And there's only so many gimmicks you can run before it starts to feel old. I think by having an escape action that the players also have access to, it adds a bit of fairness. After all, one of the most commonly heard pieces of advice is that you want your villain to be recurring. You want him to antagonize the players again and again and not just hide in the background. And so giving him an easy way to escape, a legal way to escape, makes it a lot more plausible that you can pull this off. So how are we going to go about adding this story-based action into the game? Well, luckily the game already has a story-based action. Hide. Hiding is a really strange thing to do in combat. In fact, my gut tells me if it weren't written into the rules, a lot of DMs wouldn't allow it. If it wasn't explicitly there, a lot of DMs would just say, hey, no, that's nonsense. After all, like way back when, you couldn't hide in shadows during 2nd edition. And DMs and players are always, it's not a smooth transition when they're trying to get that hiding into the game, into the combat. There's always a bit of finagling going on. So to more seamlessly incorporate hiding, the story-based action, they had to hardwire it into the system. They gave you an action that explicitly allows you to do this thing. And unlike the other actions in combat, hiding really affects the narrative more. It affects what other creatures can do to you. So that is what we're going to base our escape action on. We're going to dive into the hide rule and then use it as a template for another story-based action. The rule for the hide action is actually really short. It just tells you what you're trying to do, hide, and how you're attempting to do it with an ability check. It then refers you to another part of the rules later in that chapter, unseen targets, and then another section of the rules, how to hide. But essentially, it's if you win this contested role, you gain a certain defined benefit in combat. And you can only attempt this contest under certain circumstances. In 3rd edition, 4th edition, and the D&D Next playtest, there were a lot of rules for hiding. It was very complete, but very complex. It bogged the game down, it slowed the action at the table. So what they ended up doing was a very loose set of rules, just one sidebar. If you look at the sidebar, they gave you a few, you can certainly hide if this, you certainly cannot hide if that, and the rest of it is up to the DM. So that's all the book gives you, that's all the rules for hiding. Ability check, a sidebar, and a few very loose guidelines. and it flows seamlessly into combat because we hardwired it in. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and give you the escape rule, which is in two parts, the escape action and then the little escaping sidebar. And then we're gonna go into a deep dive on the mechanics, why I word things the way they did and how I anticipate them to work. When you take the escape action, you attempt to withdraw from combat and move up to your speed. If before the start of your next turn you come within reach of a creature that wants to stop you, it can attempt to grapple you as an opportunity attack. At the start of your next turn, if you can move and your distance away from any hostile creature is greater than its speed, you escape from combat and are removed from the initiative order. If any enemies try to pursue you, you become a quarry in a chase, following the rules in Chapter 10 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. You can attempt to escape from most combat encounters, but the DM might decide that it's impossible to escape from certain situations. You can't escape while a hostile creature has you within its reach, and if you move within the reach of a hostile creature, it can try and stop you. An invisible creature can always try to escape as long as it is not restrained. Signs of passage might still be noticed, however, and it can still be pursued. In combat, most creatures stay alert for enemies fleeing, and if you withdraw from the area around it, a creature usually tries to stop you. However, under certain circumstances, such as if a creature is distracted, the Dungeon Master might allow you to gain advantage on the contested roll made as part of the escape. Alright, our overall design goal was to hardwire into the system a way for players to get out of combat. Escaping needs to be less effective than teleporting, but better than just dashing. The first part is simple. It tells you what you're trying to do, escape, and how you're trying to do it. Move up to your speed. Now when you take the escape action, by rule, these creatures can try to reach out and grab you and reduce your speed to 0. So this action is unique in that it gives other creatures the opportunity to do something they wouldn't normally be able to do. Rules as written, you can't grapple as a reaction. You can only grapple when you take the attack action and give up one of your attacks. So this action gives everyone else the ability to do something new. So I'm going to keep an eye on that to see if it has any funny rules and interactions I don't anticipate. It also loops through the opportunity attacks and the grapple rules, so it does rely on two subsystems. But I wanted to go with opportunity attacks. I wanted to plug into opportunity attacks instead of a grapple as a reaction because I wanted to get caught up in things that turn OPs on or off. And really, a grapple roll is no more complicated than hiding already is. Alright, this third sentence, this is the meaty part. This is the juice of the action. If you meet these two requirements, you escape from combat. You're removed from initiative. We want to have this effect happen at the start of your next turn because we want to give enemies the chance to respond, to close the distance with you or to grapple you, to reduce your speed to 0 by some means. The first condition is you still need to be able to move. That is, you're not knocked out, paralyzed, restrained, something like that. Second is you need to be further away from an enemy than its speed. This means that a monster that pursued you on its last turn and got close, it closed the distance, ruins your escape. This rule also uses speed as its delivery method so that it catches things that are flying, swimming, or grappled or restrained, along those lines. Yeah, and so if you meet those requirements, you are removed from initiative and you escape combat. It's more back on the narrative story side. Just like it's really easy for the players to get into initiative by stabbing or attacking or casting a spell, we have hardwired away from them to get back out. And the last part of the rule just passes off further resolution to the chase rules. We want to have a complete circuit. We want this rule to clean up after itself. So just like the hide rules were referred you to somewhere else, we're going to use this action, we're going to resolve it by referring you to somewhere else that's already in a published material. Now I suspect that not a lot of people actually use the chase rules. I think a lot of people think maybe skill challenges are more popular. But when I publish something, my sort of public homebrew, weird phrase, my public homebrew design philosophy is that I want things to be as universal as possible. I want them to cause the least amount of friction when introduced to the most amount of tables, to cause the least harm and confusion to people. And for the sidebar, just like the DM and the player are largely responsible for narrating the effects of hiding, how it actually pans out in the story, that's going to be the similar situation to the escape action. It's up to them to sort of figure out how that weaves into what's going on. The player's handbook wisely only gives very loose guidelines on hiding. And so we're going to try to follow that advice. So at writing this sidebar, I literally took the hide section, crossed out hide, wrote escape, and just kept playing with phrases and wording, moving things around until it sounded right, until it made sense. So there you go. Now we have an action that serves the story purpose that we couldn't normally do. And it's implemented pretty similar to hiding. Sometimes you can take this action, it can initiate a contested roll, and then you get a defined benefit. The rest is contained in a loosely written sidebar that gives you some guidance on storytelling. Yeah, so that's the video, folks. I haven't play tested this rule yet, so I really need your guys' help. Let me know if you think this is a great idea. Let me know if I missed something glaringly obvious. I'm probably gonna try it out next week when I wrap up my Siege of Castle Ren from Stronghold and Followers campaign. So in case you haven't noticed, I try not to spam out videos. I try to only make one when I have something what I think is kind of unique and interesting to say. So if you want to know when one gets put up, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you have anything else to say, let me know in the comments below. Of course, some people will think this whole idea is crap. The players want to be heroic, not run away. And your encounter should allow them to do that.